Hello, it's Loxton. Over the last few years, I've been asked many questions by fans, most of them pertaining to topics about future videos, questions about video games that they want me to answer, but some of them have been more personal, like, what was your experience growing up with games? What is being a YouTuber like? How can I get started? What's your advice? And most commonly, what are some of your favorite games? And that is the question I want to answer today. First though, I want to mention this brand new social media website I just joined. It's called Games Grabber. You can find a link to my page in the description. And on here I've listed a bunch of my favorite games, lists of a bunch of stuff that I own and that you see in the backgrounds of my videos, and links to them. Even links to all the equipment I use if you're thinking of creating a channel of your own. I definitely recommend following that link, signing up, and following me on here. I'll be updating it with my videos from time to time. It's going to be awesome. But I was thinking, if I was just choosing like my top 10 favorite games from my current perspective, I'd either be choosing mostly older ones with my nostalgia goggles on, or mostly newer ones with the most recent memory in mind. So I decided, hey, I'm just over 2 decades old, might as well break my life into 4 5-year chunks. One of them's 6 years, because 0 to 6, when you're that young, you can't really remember anything. Plus, this helps keep things contextual. You know how old I was when I played this game and made that one of my favorite games. So that definitely influences your opinion on everything. How old you are, your current life experiences, your life situation, yada yada, on with the show. So let's get started with part 1 of my life, age 0 to 6. Really though, of course all these games were played when I was like 4, 5, and 6. As I grew up, I only ever used the family PC to play games. The good old Windows 95 machine. I played mostly educational games, both for school and social education. Games like Putt-Putt and Freddy Fish. But just because I mainly played these doesn't mean they were my favorite. But it does lead into number 5, Freddy Fish Maze Madness. Unlike your typical Freddy Fish game where you talk to fish, go through an adventure, click on stuff, this one was all about mazes and getting through them, avoiding enemies and collecting everything that you need. It even came with a build your own maze function, which I played on a lot more than the actual game. I also played with a lot of Legos at this age, and I mean a lot. So of course, when Lego Island came out, my parents had to buy it for me. Lego Island was the very first Lego game, and also my first first-person game. Whoa! I can be the Lego? This game was known for its terrible controls and lack of content. But when you're 5, you don't really care about that. I 100%ed this game multiple times, and my favorite memory of it was being terrified of the racetrack. That giant skeleton that would kick you right off the course. I did it once, lost, and never did it again. Until it was the last thing to do. So I got my body ready, and I braved it. Take that, skeleton! That's probably what I sounded like at that age. I don't know for a fact, but... My parents also bought a lot of off-brand PC games, because they were significantly cheaper. Games like these. All of which by the same company, by the way. They're essentially taking really good console games, making their own versions, and putting them on PC. But they did have one original game that I know of, and it goes right into number 3, Speedy Eggbert. It is a very simple 2D platformer, and looking at it now, the controls are weird, the gameplay's boring, there's like nothing good about it. But again, when you're 5, you're still just impressed that pressing a button moves the thing on a screen. This game also had a level editor, and I spent significantly more time on that than I did the actual game. And the controls are so weird. Just based off memory, it was something like, you press spacebar to jump, you hold control and press spacebar to jump lowly, and you hold shift and press spacebar to jump high. I also remember as a kid making up my own story for the game, because the game has no story whatsoever, it's just a bunch of levels that you play through. I built in the level editor a little bat cave type thing, and I was essentially Batman, but Eggbert. Before I would play through any of the worlds, I would always stop at my base and go through that level, because it was cool, and I had all my equipment and stuff, and it was really silly. I was a cute kid, I guess. In number 2 is Croc, Legend of the Gobos. This game, oh my word. I've beaten this game more times than you can count on a hand. So at least 6. It was my first good 3D platformer, and it blew my socks off. At the time, 3D platformers were brand new, so no one quite knew how to make it. As a result, Croc has tank controls. It's a little weird. But even still, these are some of the most solid controls of any 3D platformer. For the next while. I actually went back a few years ago and played through it again, though the PS1 version instead. Because you know how hard it is to get old games to work on newer PCs. What do you mean I don't have enough RAM? I have 600 times as much as I need. I went back because I never actually beat it 100%. I would always get stuck at 99. I found absolutely every puzzle piece, absolutely every gobo, absolutely everything, except for the third to last level. I could beat the level, but I couldn't get all 6 gobos in one go, and that's what you have to do. This level was nothing but minigames, and minigames that you had one chance on each. If you lost one minigame, you'd have to redo the whole level, after playing through the whole level. When I went back to it though and got to that level, I beat it almost immediately. Actually, it was pretty immediately. It wasn't that hard at all. I must have sucked as a kid. But I finally did it! Finally got to the secret world at the end and beat the game 100%. Yes! But my absolute favorite game at the time was Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The Sonic and Knuckles collection. Really though, if you look at it, it's like, look, it comes with Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. And Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Ooh! It was fast, it had the greatest music and tightest controls of any game I had ever played at that point. And it still holds up today. That's how good this game is. Sonic and Tails were so cool. And then Knuckles. Oh my word, Knuckles! I've beaten this game more times than you could count on 2 hands. So at least 11. And Knuckles was my favorite character. He's just so much cooler. Though at the time, I thought Knuckles was a girl. Because Knuckles has long hair. I was very sheltered at that age. And boy, when the cartoon came around and I heard his voice, I was confused. So there's the top 5 for that age group. Now on to the next one, 7 to 11. And we start with Arch Rivals. Wait, this is an NES game, we're going backwards, what? I never really had any consoles, it was all PC games, but then around age 7, I started going over to a friend's house, because I finally had friends. And he had an old NES, on which we played a ton of games. Double Dragon 2, it was mostly Double Dragon 2 and Arch Rivals. Surprisingly, he didn't have any Mario games, or like any Nintendo games. Arch Rivals is a 2v2 basketball game. However, the twist is that you are allowed to full-on punch other players in the mouth to get the ball. I remember countless times where we would be laughing so hard it hurt, because I'd just be punching him, not even caring that the ball's on the other side of the court. Just non-stop, punch, punch, you fell down. If it had been just me playing it, I'm sure I wouldn't think so highly of this game. But because I played it almost exclusively with him, and we had the greatest time doing it, that puts this game at number 5. And the same can be said of CTR, Crash Team Racing. My parents had finally bought a PlayStation 1, our very first console. And on it, I had mostly movie tie-in games. Because all I really knew was PC games and movies. Well, it was kind of boring, though I did have a few Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games. And they were amazing. But CTR takes the cake. It's basically Mario Kart 64, but with Crash Bandicoot characters, and better. Even looking back on it without nostalgia goggles, I can very clearly say CTR was a much better racing game than Mario Kart 64. Double Dash blew it out of the water though, so take that into consideration. The main reason I loved this so much was not only because of its amazing single-player adventure mode, but its multiplayer. I have many fond memories of playing this super late into the night with my dad. It was fantastic. Thanks, Dad. All this console stuff didn't get me away from the PC though. I still played a lot of Age of Empires 2. Again, admittedly playing more on the map maker than the actual game. I'd make a ton of scenarios and then watch my dad play through them. My dad is still super into this game. I think that just shows how good it still holds up to this day. And when they re-released the HD version on Steam, mods. Oh my goodness. My dad has over 1,000 hours already on the Steam version. And he's probably played it at least twice as much on the non-Steam version. But I did still thoroughly enjoy the scenarios, but they were too hard for me at that age. RTS strategy games were not my strong suit at the time, though when it did re-release on Steam, I got it again, finally played through all those scenarios, and still think it's one of the greatest RTS games. The Game Boy Advance was an amazing handheld, though my first handheld was this Game Boy Color with the duct tape holding on the batteries. But I did eventually get a Game Boy Advance SP, which finally had a backlight, which was perfect for my long nighttime sessions of Pokemon Emerald and Golden Sun. If I had to pick between the two, I'd say the Golden Sun duology. And if I had to pick between the two Golden Suns, I'd say The Lost Age, which is the second one. It was the first long turn-based RPG I had ever finished to completion besides Pokemon. And its animations in the battles were amazing. Its story was incredible and deep, but not so deep that you couldn't understand it when you're 8. And I think that's definitely something everyone needs to take into consideration. The Golden Sun plotline, looking back on it, is pretty simple. But when you're 8, oh my word, it's the greatest. And I think that actually puts it higher up in terms of game greatness. It knew its target audience, and it didn't try to make its plot too complex. Anyway, the battle system, the class system with the Djinns, just, oh my goodness. This is why I don't make game reviews. They would just be oh my goodness and oh man, non-stop. But for the time when I played it, perfect everything. And the music is still some of my favorite music from any game, period. And then the third one came out, and it's still good. It's not terrible that everyone seems to think it is. It's good. It's definitely the worst of the three, but that doesn't make it a terrible game. But number one for this age range has got to be Rayman, that's the back. Rayman 2, The Great Escape, the PC version. Later on I learned that the Nintendo 64 version and the PS1 version are both very different from the PC version. Like, significantly. Though now I would recommend picking it up as Rayman 2 Revolution, the PS2 director's cut with all the different versions smashed into one kind of deal. It's the PC version with a little bit of added stuff. This game is not only an incredibly solid 3D platformer with an excellent story, it's also incredibly immersive. It was its fantasy setting that really drew me in. It was the first time I had felt immersed in something. And I really, really love the creepy levels. It's what got me into creepy things. The range of emotion this game causes you to feel is very unique for a 3D platformer. And this game is also one of the longest 3D platformers I've ever played. And it does so without repeating any content like some others. All that, its fantastic score, and again, its amazing immersion is what puts it right into my number one spot for that age group. And now we move on to my teen years, and this is where narrowing down the games finally got challenging. This is when I finally gave up TV and just played games instead. And instead of replaying through games I already had, I kept buying more, playing through those, then getting another, playing through that, playing another, getting through that. This was the time period I began collecting. So anyway, early high school. At this point, I had played through a few of the Final Fantasy games. None of them really stuck out to me too much. That is, until Crisis Core. Final Fantasy VII. It's the prequel to Final Fantasy VII, and it's on the PSP instead of the PlayStation. It took a more action RPG approach, which is perhaps why I preferred it. That, plus the voice-acted story bits going through the origins of Zack and Sephiroth. And oh man, without any spoilers, this game, in my opinion, has some of the greatest moments in Final Fantasy history. It's really what got me into JRPGs, which leads me right into number 4. Tales of the Abyss. I had played plenty of 60+ hour games before, but I had never actually beaten any. They would usually lose my interest about midway through, but not this time. Tales of the Abyss has fantastic character development and story, an overarching plot that steadily advances, as well as, shall I say, episodic subplots that would progress just fast enough for me to never lose interest. It was very much like an anime. In fact, I can probably thank this game for my subsequent anime phase that happened shortly after. So a game that's inspired an entire chunk of my life? That has got to be important. Which is why it's right here, at number 4. But it's not the only game to have influenced me greatly. So, in junior high, I sort of developed an emo, edgy wannabe phase. We all have things we're embarrassed about, come on. And believe it or not, I can actually thank a game for getting me out of that. The World Ends With You. This game to this day has some of the greatest DS controls of any game I've ever played, and the best action RPG combat, and it has so many creative and unique game design choices. It's definitely a game I'd recommend if you're getting into game design. But aside from its fantastic gameplay, and its amazing music by the way, the thing that really struck me was its story. It's about this very emo character, Neku. He hates people, acts depressed all the time, all that stuff. So of course, I related to him. Or at least felt like I wanted to. But throughout the story, he slowly opens up and learns many life lessons. But it's never like force-fed. Those lessons are never, boom, look at all these life lessons, ooh, 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 ooh. It's all subtle, and I think that's what really got to me. I learned that that kind of attitude doesn't really fit in the society of the world. The world ends with you. Do what you will with it. This game legitimately changed me, and for that, I am eternally grateful. Also, if you have a DS or 3DS, this is a must-have. Like, seriously. If I was to make just a top 10 DS games video, number 1. Easy. By the way, it has a mobile port, but don't play that one. The controls do not work nearly as well on a touchscreen like a phone as much as they do with a stylus and buttons. Just trust me on that. In this time period is when I played The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which to this day is still my favorite Zelda game, but I immediately played Okami right after, and it blew Zelda right out of the water. Mythology has always intrigued me, as well as games with unique art styles, as well as good stories and immersive worlds. And Okami has all of that. It's basically if you took Zelda and made it twice as good. It's the Zelda game that Zelda games wishes it could be. And I can't really say much more about it other than that. It's just so amazing, I'm speechless. I definitely recommend picking it up on either the Wii or PSN if you have a PS3. There's an HD re-release of it on there. And Okami would be number 1 if it wasn't for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now, hang on a second. Not the base game. You're probably aware of the modding community within Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Project M and all that. I was never able to get into Project M, but rather Brawl Plus. Maybe you've heard of that. Brawl Plus has the same idea as Project M, only instead of trying to make it into another Melee, they'd make it Brawl, but a little faster and more balanced. Which I definitely prefer to Project M. Anyway, this was the time period where I was getting my interest in technology and computer programming and all that. So of course, as soon as I found out you can mod a Wii, I did it. And this was before it was super easy. My Wii is hard modded, meaning the hardware is changed, not just the software. If you're at all or were at all into Brawl modding, then you're probably aware of Brawl Vault and Kitty Corp. Well, none of those existed yet when I started. Back in my day! But yeah, the amount of time I spent modding it, and the amount of time I've spent playing it, and the amount of sheer fun it is why I put it at number 1. And now on to the modern era. And man, this one was hard to narrow down. Age 17 to today, 21. And at number 5, I'll put the earliest. This game had come out years before, but I didn't play them until this time. And it is the Zone of the Enders duology. And if I had to pick one, it'd be the second one. Both of them are still, in my opinion, the greatest mech games. The story and the length of the games hold them back, but the sheer quality of the gameplay pushes them right into my number 5. It's another game series by Hideo Kojima, the guy behind Metal Gear, which is another series I love. But this one takes the cake. Non-stop action all the way through. You feel fast and powerful, but not so much that things are easy. The controls are phenomenal and feel great, especially in the second one. The second one takes everything about the first one and improves upon it greatly. It's really hard to explain control feel without you playing it yourself. So I definitely recommend finding these if you still have your PS2 laying around. There is an HD re-release on PS3, but I've heard that one has frame rate issues, to the point where it ruins the game. That is until a patch that I just found out about while double checking myself on that. So it's good now. Definitely get it. I'm gonna have to pick that up too. So I mentioned how much modding made the difference for me in terms of Brawl. Well, the same can be said of the Elder Scrolls. 4 and 5, if I had to pick one. That's really hard. I guess 5. just because of the most recent replay I did of it. The base games are good, but I wouldn't really put them super highly up in any top 10 list. But when you include the mods, which improve literally everything about the game, the AI, the graphics, the amount of content there is, the side quests, the stuff, just, as I said, literally everything, it takes it from a good game to a fantastic game. And with just the sheer amount of time I spent getting mods and debugging them, and then playing through them, really tells the tale for itself. Just recently, with my most recent computer build, I replayed through Skyrim with over 300 mods on it. And it looks incredible, and it's basically a whole nother game at that point. I remember sometimes in Oblivion, after I installed tons of immersion mods, I would just go there to relax. I wouldn't even do any side quests. I'd just walk around towns, explore, enjoy the rain, enjoy the sights and sounds. It was just fun. A good pastime to just sit down and relax to after a hard day at school. So immersion, story, gameplay, world development, character development, all of these are super important to me in a game. And all of these are what the Mass Effect trilogy has. And again, if I had to choose one, it would be 2. On a scale of okay to amazing, this is how it would look. The infamous ending of Mass Effect 3 aside, it's all about the journey and the experience, the characters' stories being developed, the whole universe being developed. Never before have I felt so close to so many characters at once. Also, Femship's voice actress? That is some award-winning work. The most modern game on this list makes it only to number 2, and this was the hardest one to narrow down. I was like, which of these? These are both so fantastic, and I was, this one. I'll go with this one. Just because of the amount of fun I've been having. This game came out at the perfect time for me, just before I finally moved out of my parents' house and got my own living room. Now, I have friends come over all the time, and we have the hugest blast. And that's really what makes this game for me. The couch gameplay, the couch versus, couch co-op, however you want to say it. We train amiibos together, fight 8-player battles together, fight against comms on a team together, fight each other a whole bunch. The custom stage building is super fun for me. I love playing on custom stages. It finally has decent online. I mean, it could be better, but it's way better than Brawl ever was. Also, it has Pac-Man. That sold me on amiibos immediately. I could probably summarize Smash 4 into one word. Fun. The most fun. And now for my number 1 of the modern era. And that award goes to Team Fortress 2. First though, I'll have to say I haven't really played Team Fortress 2 much recently, as in like the most recent 2 years. But from age 17 to 20, oh my word, it was my life. During the days of senior high school and early college, I would play it every night. Sometimes until the sun came up the next day. It's one of the very few games I've clocked more than 1,000 hours into, and I have so many fond memories by it. I've made tons of online friends through it. Before my Let's Play channel was a Let's Play channel, I just posted a whole bunch of TF2 replays of myself. I was never crazy amazing at the game. I didn't play on competitive servers that often, but I mean, I was good. I would frequently rank at the top. And I really enjoyed playing Man vs. Machine with all my online friends. And that's, again, what made the game for me. The little community friend group that I ended up making through it. To this day, it is still one of my favorite multiplayer games, and one of the only multiplayer first-person shooter games that I even like. But most importantly, it will always have some of my fondest memories in my gaming life. Thank you, TF2 friends. So there you go, my top 5 favorite games from different periods of my life. Now, of course it was ridiculous for me to narrow it down this much, so here are all my honorable mentions, and if that was too fast for you, Games Grabber. That link in the description will take you to a collection of all the games I've mentioned, as well as all of my honorable mentions, as well as links to them if you're interested in getting them. So please, go check that out and give me a follow on there too. It's going to be awesome. Just like you. So stay awesome, and never stop using that noggin. And tell me down below, what are some of your favorite games from ages 0 to 6? See you all next time.